Story we are told is that America is horrifically divided, and to the average eye, she certainly is. The media and the algorithms make sure that everyone who is paying attention is siloed into their corner and taught to hate the opposing viewpoint. Political discrimination is the last untaboo form of hatred allowed in the United States. If you are a conservative, you have permission to hate the liberals. And if you are a liberal, you have mandate and the hand of God on your side, giving you full authority of blessing to destroy the views of a conservative. The party constructs are there for all of us to team up and make sure that we have a reasonable amount of mob on our side in order to try to win elections and punish the despisable other side. In 2020, when the world shut down, the powerful exposed their real motivations behind their divide and subdue methods. They demonstrated clearly that there was a new technocratic utopia out there, and with enough authority and fear, they could use the division to keep people isolated and bathed in hatred for the ushering in of their utopia. The power of the state became nearly total. From lockdown to mask mandates to political and media propaganda, the curtain on the motives was lifted, and the show was happening regardless of the cries by many that something nefarious and dark was happening to liberty. The powerful made a bet. They had subdued enough people into media consumption and blasé education that they could make their moves and the people would not respond. Certainly there was resistance, but the media, social medias, governments, celebrities, and cultural figures all went along with the move and silenced anyone speaking out. Post a video of police being absolute brutalists, and it was gone in an instant. Show the unmarked and unnamed officers in Canada throttling peaceful protesters and conscripting tow truck drivers by force, and you were suddenly a Confederate Nazi who wanted grandma to die. Ask questions about a rushed vaccine, and the full force of authoritarian memory holding was on your back in an instant. Whatever resistance there was gained a negligible footing, and the real stories of what was happening on the ground was removed, disappeared, smeared, maligned, and kookified to the point that all credibility was lost. In the spring of 2023, a character in politics began to emerge. He was someone who had spoken loudly and at great expense to his career and reputation about the negatives of authoritarian government. He pushed on the people who were driving this new authoritarianism and was silenced at every turn. His character and life were virtually assassinated, just as his own father and uncle had been. Certainly he was alive, but the results of the assault were the same. He was dead to the establishment and to the public at large. But he decided to run for the most public office in the United States, the presidency. Suddenly he could no longer be ignored, and some portion of his story had to be told. The same apparatus rolled into high gear and summoned the machine to do its work. He was ostracized from his own political party, the very one his martyred uncle and father had helped add credibility and legacy to. His chances were rigged from the beginning, and then subsequent hurdle after hurdle were placed in front of him. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. decided to take on the larger task of running as an independent. The Uniparty had done all it could in the wake of the traction gained by Ross Perot in 1992 to make running as an independent a near Herculean task, unobtainable by nearly everyone. They made the signature gathering thresholds difficult, if not impossible, and then added layer upon layer of legalities to make sure that only the most savvy of people could get through the first layers into the dungeon of ill democracy. But Mr. Kennedy did it. He worked diligently with his volunteers and highly motivated team to help the hurdles get removed. With each obstacle that he overcame, something interesting began to happen. The people that he was attracting to the movement weren't the typical divide and conquer types. They were average Americans, hoping to see the long ago covered DNA of the United States return to its governable, healthy state. They united around ideas instead of personality. They listened to each other in the spirit of Mr. Kennedy's leadership and began to understand that the things that they had in common were far greater than the things they disagreed about. The moment of perilousness for the country was too great to bicker over the same nonsense that the party diehards had insisted were the issues that threatened to destroy America. They understood that cultural issues could never be solved or discussed if culture was destroyed by an overbearing and authoritative government. So they united around the ideas and seemed zealously uncontrollable by the lawfare and dirty tricks that usually impede good people from doing anything in their top-down controlled system. So I wanted to ask a few people why it happened. I had watched a few of my followers on X interact with each other, and I thought the story was fascinating. I found a person from the Northeast who had been in business all his life, the quintessential Republican voter, someone who probably listened to talk radio and watched Fox News for most of his adulthood. And I found a hippie from Hawaii, someone who loves nature and tie-dyes and has an incredible sensitivity to the planet and his soul. I watched as they interacted around this unifying leader and his ideas and saw that they could get along. These were two people who in any other circumstance would be pitted against one another as enemies. people who would never agree on anything, let alone politics. But here they were, dialoguing with ideas and uniting behind a better future for America. David and John are two baby boomers, two people who still remember an America that held its promise and gave opportunity to them in ways that generations that follow may never understand. So I sat down with them and asked them about their hopes for the Kennedy presidency. I wondered with them why they were so devoted to the ideas in this campaign. What was it that allowed them to set down their predispositions towards political hatred and see a way through the blizzard of lies? The conversations were fascinating and beautiful. So meet John and David, two Kennedy supporters who embody the moment that could be if we wake up to realize the party system wants us divided. They benefit from it when we are. They can't control David or John with their tactics any longer, and the political discrimination that they love to use vanishes in an instant when people unify around ideas instead of personality or fear.
So I'm 78 years old, so I guess I qualify as a baby boomer. An early one, I was 1946. I'm pretty sure that my dad and mom both voted Republican, but I don't know that for sure. It was never a big deal in our household. I think I've always been conservative because, my dad, he ran manufacturing for a company that made all different types of toys. At the dinner table and everything, all we talked about was manufacturing. And in manufacturing, everything either is right or wrong. There's not a lot of in between. All of those things, I think, tended to make me conservative in the way that I thought about things. If you're looking for a definition of politics, I think that's kind of what it is. You're dealing with other people. I voted as a Republican, and I always voted for whoever the Republican president was. And I always supported them because it all made sense to me. It was practical, it was orderly, and it just all made sense.
McGovern, in 72, my first vote. He only carried Massachusetts. I said, I'm in the wrong country. So I kind of got political. I still voted Democrat up until 1990 when they just went off the wire and started taking money for wars, just like the Republicans. I said, what the hell is going on, So I switched to the Green Party in 1990, and I voted for Native this time and campaigned for him. And that really turned me against the DNA because they ripped them. The Republicans were nicer to me, when I was wave signing. Then the Democrats were throwing soda cans at me and yelling and screaming. The Democratic Party was dead to me. It was a travesty to JFK's, name and stuff. I'm basically an old JFK Democrat that had to leave the party. I mean, even for the people that didn't experience JFK, and I was kind of young, when it happened. So, I was a teenager, so I wasn't really much into politics. But, I could see my father and mother, especially when he was assassinated, how much a loss it was.
I think the Liberal Democrat Party was quite a different place. I looked at it more from the perspective of how our country operated on an international basis than necessarily how it operated on a local basis within the country. I guess I always thought that, things that were going on in the country were reasonable. And I think like a lot of people my age, I always felt like if things got out of whack from one perspective or another, if the new people that came in would sort it out and straighten it out and somehow or other everything would get it fixed. I thought of it in a sense as a cyclical thing. And I never really thought of it from the perspective that things that being done were against the Constitution or questioned whether or not I had the right to speak. I always felt like, especially up until recently, I always felt like I had the right to speak and speak my mind and not have to worry about any blowback, whether it's from the government or from my friends. And it never occurred to me that that type of thing would happen in the United States. I always thought we're all pulling basically in the same direction and that things would always pretty much sort themselves out.
I never knew about the forefathers saying political parties are going to be the death of America. Pretty much gave up voting before Trump came to office. With the Trump-Hillary thing, I was supporting Bernie. I was campaigning. When they ditched Bernie, I gave up. I didn't even vote in that election because I said it's not an election anymore. It's two corporations giving us crap. I voted in Hawaii at the same precinct for 15 years. And when Bernie was running, there was people coming out of the jungle, hippie families with their kids on their backs. And I was just watching amazed because, the voting thing, I was there for a couple of hours, waiting in line to vote. There were so many people that came out that never voted. I never saw at my precinct before. So, those are the 50% of the people that just stopped voting. Like me, I stopped voting the last 2 cycles, I just said, forget it. I voted for the local people, that I knew, but I said, what the hell? We don't got no choice. It's like Russia. It's the beast with 2 heads, or something like that.
Because I think of things from a business perspective, I think President Trump, he felt that America's greatest weapon was their economic strength. He wanted to make sure that America was economically the strongest country in the world, because I think he felt that if we were the strongest economic country, that we could have a positive influence, not necessarily tell them what to do or how to do it, but just a positive influence. That people would look to America and say, we'd like to be that way, because people there are doing pretty well. They're safe and they're strong, and they take care of the people in their country that are less fortunate than others. They reach out, they have the money to do that.
I love RFK Jr. because he put it all together for me. I bowed. I went to Hawaii, but he stuck in there, trying to save the country. And he gave me hope for America, too. I lost hope in America. I figured I'm going to put my lot in with the Hawaiian government. And what RFK Jr. is talking about is the America I like, not the America that's been taken over since JFK was assassinated.
The only person that would actually seek out the answers to those questions is Robert Kennedy Jr. He's the only person that even has the mental capacity to think about it. These other people think in political terms. Bobby thinks in realistic terms. So I don't care whether he's a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. He's the only one of the people that's running that can actually realistically think and solve problems and not get them all tangled up in these political things. The reason that I can't support President Trump is he's obviously not a good manager. He hired a lot of people that he had to fire. That's not the sign of somebody that knows how to hire good people. If you're a person that doesn't want to start wars, the last person you want to hire is John Bolton. He likes to fight. Bobby's not that kind of guy. He's a really smart guy. I don't agree with everything. His position on abortion is not exactly where I am, but I don't think it's unreasonable. He said every abortion is a tragedy.
His commitment to the environment, because that's what I love the Hawaiians. That's why I moved here. The island's the most important thing. Lahaina would have never happened if the Hawaiians were running the government. So I love Robert Kennedy Jr. for that. And I just love him because he's a peacemaker. He believes, like JFK, that the duty is keep America out of war. And the Democrats and Republicans, they're just the same party. They're just owned by the rich, I tell my friends, look, what would you do if you had all the money in the world and everybody hated you? You would buy up all the political parties, all the corporations, all the money.
I think the majority of people in this generation are retired. Whatever they've put away, that's all they have. They get Social Security, but I think they're nervous that might somehow or other might start going down or completely go away. But they're worried about that because at our age, we can't work anymore. I think what that does is that causes them to be afraid. The best thing that happened to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is that they didn't let him run as a Democrat, and they forced him to run as an independent.
I think the baby boomers are going to wake up. They're going to wake up. They just got to see it. They're all stuck on mainstream media.
The biggest reason why I have a problem with President Trump now, I voted for him twice, the way COVID got handled, and the vaccine, the people that are getting injured by vaccines need to be helped. The vaccines were rushed, as far as I'm concerned. The thing that bothered me the most was that President Trump, he wanted to be, in a sense, the savior. He should have listened to people like Scott Atlas and Jay Bhattacharya and some of the other people that I know he talked to. If he had come out and said, the way I handled COVID wasn't perfect, but I'm going to help all the people that are either still sick or got injured by the vaccine, and I'm going to take the vaccine off the market. If he had said that, no one could have beat him. Nobody.
I've been in AA for over 40 years too, so I love people in 12-step because, they're really trying to have a spiritual life, like what Jesus said. RFK Jr., I'm sure he's the same way, but through AA, I learned to love Jesus and all the saints, all the people that were saying, God wants everybody to have a great life. So nobody's outside of God. Science says the same thing, There's this one energy field, we're all part of it. We're just pretending to be separate. Spiritual kind of way of life, like our forefathers always talked like that. It was always God gave us these freedoms, and we're making this government to protect what God already gave us. Because what God gave, and man, so he always wants to take away. But I can tell he loves his dad and he loves JFK, and he loves them so much that he wants to be like them. The way you love somebody is you finish their work, so everybody can see it. You embody their work.
John and David both speak the same language, but at times they sound nothing alike. For all of my life, that was justification for dismissal of either person by the other. Yet just because someone sees the world differently, it might not be cause for outright dismissal. Uniquely, Mr. Kennedy has created an atmosphere of politics around his campaign that invite all of us into the discussion. It is a different way of thinking about the world and politics, and it's resonating with people who remember from a different time, when politics was about synthesizing the best ideas, and with people who have never lived in anything other than division. It's a bit of Pollyanna, and it might ultimately come across as a dismissal of values, but I think generally speaking, the call to something better, to reconcile between parties and people who don't sound or look like each other in how they see the world, is the America that might find its way towards a new future.